Aiden is 11 years old.
So,
Yeah.
Laura, ask your question.
Is it mandatory to use the yeast?
The nutritional yeast that I call for in the gravy recipe, while it's not mandatory, it's the part of the flavor profile and makes it delicious. If you don't have nutritional yeast, you can probably just make it with flour and all the other seasonings that'll thicken it up. But nutritional yeast gives it its delicious, rich flavor.
It gives it like a nutty, cheesy, just like, yeah, sensational flavoring.
So I have another question. What is the history of this recipe?
Ooh.
Where's the what?
What's the history of this recipe?
Yeah.
Oh, the history, I've kind of changed the recipe and molded it over the years to my tastes. But the history is I was born and raised on a hippie commune called The Farm here in Tennessee. We're about an hour southwest of Nashville. And I grew up here, and this was one of my favorite childhood recipes that my mom would make and other people in the community would make. And it's always been one of my favorite comfort foods. And I also cook this as a kind of tribal sharing celebration at family reunions, or when I have friends over for a while, I would do like a Sunday brunch every Sunday, and we would do biscuits and gravy and then tofu scramble and fruit salad and anything anybody else wanted to bring. And Orr has had it at sunrise a number of times over our ragweed celebration and has asked me to share it with you.
And it has gotten kind of famous in the vegan community because of the farm cookbook that came out in the 70s.
Right. Yeah,
So,
the farm put out a lot of propaganda back in the 70s. One of those was a vegetarian and vegan cookbook, which I've actually come across a number of restaurants and cafes, especially vegan ones around the country, that have used that cookbook as kind of the backbone of their kitchen.
well, I mean, most of the recipes in that book are so completely and totally simple with very few ingredients, but it also shows how to make like tofu and tempeh from scratch, and
Right.
things that people nowadays can just buy. But back in the day, it was like you had to make it yourself.
Right.
So
So in the recipe, the biscuits take a little bit longer to prepare and to bake than the gravy. The gravy doesn't take long. So what I'd recommend is we all start by firing up our ovens. And I sent over 2 recipes for the biscuits. One is a buttery biscuit. And that's kind of a flaky, buttery, traditional kind of classic biscuit. And then the other one are drop biscuits, spelt drop biscuits. I found when I eliminated wheat and switched to spelt flour, my stomach enjoyed them more. The gravy was creamier, and the biscuits were kind of lighter and fluffier, didn't sit so heavy in my stomach.
so you use spelt flour for the gravy too?
I use spelt flour for the gravy. It makes it a little creamier. And yeah, I enjoy spelt flour, but that being said, you can use white flour or wheat flour or any other numbers of flours, probably millet. I'm actually going to try an experiment today. I'm doing a diet that was prescribed by a friend of mine. I'm switching into this kind of meat-based diet for a month with bone broths and all kinds of yumminess. And so I'm not allowed to eat grains or beans or nuts or lots of other things. So I'm going to go out on a limb and try a mix of cassava flour and tapioca flour for the gravy, which I'll be enjoying over the next week. But I'm going to make the traditional biscuits so my family can enjoy the biscuits and gravy. But I'm not allowed to eat biscuits. But that's okay.
That sucks.
Just like, well,
I love biscuits. I don't know how you do it.
just,
Yes, they're very good. So
well, I mean, I grew up eating so much gluten and soy that I can't eat either now. So, you know, growing up vegetarian, that was like, you know, the protein of choice or the meat of choice. And now I had
But
to,
when did
I also had to start eating meat to be able to, what do you call it? Get,
protein?
but no, I mean, I get my protein from beans. I really love lentils. I
Yeah,
love them.
lentils are
So,
legumes.
all right. Let's go over the ingredient list here.
Okay, but before you do, he mentioned about firing up the oven. So you did not say what temperature.
yeah, so if you want to do the buttery biscuits, the ones that we need, that's going to be at 375. Or if you want to do the spelt drop biscuits, that's going to be at 350.
All right. And thank you for mentioning that, because I always forget to preheat the oven, and that really messes with recipes. So, now you did mention for the gravy, it's flour, nutritional yeast, olive oil, soy sauce, onions, garlic, and then optional are mushrooms and bell peppers.
Oh, mushrooms.
I got these beautiful shiitake mushrooms at the farmer's market yesterday.
But how do they call it shiitake if they grow in the USA?
Well, I mean, they are a Japanese mushroom. So, I mean, we grow them in the US, but yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, like Hubb said, the secret to the gravy is the nutritional yeast. And it also is an essential ingredient. If you're vegan, you have to get B12.
Yeah.
This is,
I think I have some.
yep. So this is, if you are vegan, you're not getting B12 very easily, unless you're eating fresh greens that are unwashed, because B12 is in the soil. So otherwise, and then I don't tend to have milk. So can I use a can of either evaporated milk or coconut milk?
You could use probably the milk off the coconut milk. I wouldn't necessarily mix the coconut cream. I think that would change it. Or you can just use water for anywhere here. You know, any kind of liquid will work for where it calls for milk. You could use broth, bone broth, or, you know, veggie broth. You could use just straight up water. You know, throughout the years, I just used water until I got hooked on the wide world of delicious dairy. And I since moved on to milk in place of water. Definitely in the gravy and the biscuits, if you want to make them even creamier too.
And so, I mean, I grew up, well, you know, we had our own goats, so we had our own dairy, but I never really got into milk except to cook with.
Yeah.
Like, I never got into really drinking it. I was like, because I grew up without it, I guess. But all right.
What is a spelt flour?
What is spelt flour?
Yeah.
Spelt is another grain similar to wheat. It's kind of like a more ancient, similar version. It's got gluten in it, but not as high of a gluten content. And it's maybe a little more digestible. If you are going to use wheat flour, I definitely recommend white flour instead of whole wheat flour. White will make a fluffier biscuit and a kind of creamier gravy, and is actually easier to digest.
Well, that's interesting. My grandpa has problems like eating things, like swallowing things. So I don't know if we have some of them here. I think yes.
The spelt is, I think, a much more ancient grain.
Yeah.
Like, what do they call that? People who like to eat pre-colonial foods, I think eat some of that. All right. I have my mixing cup and we can
All
start.
right, we ready to make some biscuits?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's all scoop out 2 cups of flour. Whichever recipe we're starting for calls for 2 cups of flour.
Now, is this recipe very forgiving? I mean, like with baking, a lot of times I've noticed that
I would try and
a lot
be
of
right.
measurement of stuff instead of volume. But I guess if you make less biscuits if it's less flour, right?
Right, but you also kind of want to get your proportions right. So I would try with the gravy. It's a lot more like you can kind of wing it. With the biscuits, it's more kind of precise. So I would definitely follow along. So both of the recipes also call for 2 teaspoons of baking powder next.
Don't mix them up like I do a lot of times.
And what I often do when measuring baking powder or baking soda, since they have a tendency to clump and nobody really likes to taste the flavor of either, you want to kind of mix evenly throughout. I'll use a little like tea strainer or, you know, some kind of little sieve that's got a really fine mesh. And then I drop my my powders into there so that they get nice and finely, evenly mixed in. So we got 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Here it is, my tea thing. Yeah, I've done that before where I've ended up with a bite of baking soda and that was like, right. So 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Yep.
I always have to say it again because I have mixed up baking soda and baking powder a few times.
Yeah, that's unpleasant experience as well. And then the buttery biscuits call for 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. The drop biscuits call for 1/3. You could probably just use 1/4 on either one. Then we're on to salt. And the buttery biscuits call for 1/2 teaspoon. And the drop biscuits call for 1/2 teaspoon.
How essential is the salt?
Critical. Any kind of baking, you want to put the precise amount of salt they call for. It helps with the whole rising, baking, tasting good process. I mean, if you're salt, we have 1/2 teaspoon in the buttery biscuits.
Okay.
And 1 full teaspoon in the spelt drop biscuits.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I've never done this. It's fun to do 2 parallel.
I really like using this tea strainer. Like that makes it a lot easier.
Oh yeah, and it's so fine. And then, you know, you kind of sift it around as you're putting it in. It also really mixes it well rather than just dumping a teaspoon in, you know?
Yep.
Now I like to get kind of a short-handled like salad fork, I think these are, for the biscuits, because 1, you can mix it all up nicely. And 2, when you go to cut in your butter or mix in your wet and dry, it's nice. You know, some people like to use like butter knives and they go in and cut with 2 butter knives and cut and cut and cut. I find that to be frustratingly slow. Whereas, you know, a fork is like 4 knives all bound together. made great. My mom was trying to get me hyped on a pastry cutter. They have this specialized thing that's got like maybe eight little tines, and you can cut your
Well, I
butter.
use those to make mashed potatoes. I have one of those,
Oh, yeah,
and
Yeah.
I like doing mashed potatoes with it.
nice.
So far we've just got the dry ingredients in the mixing.
So far we got the dry ingredients, and here's where the two separate. On the buttery biscuits, we're gonna go ahead and cut and mix in our butter. On the drop biscuits, you're gonna get a separate bowl and mix all of your liquid ingredients. You're gonna mix your milk or water and your vinegar and your oil all together. Now the vinegar does this cool thing. I would use like apple cider vinegar. I guess you could use white vinegar. I don't know about balsamic. But you're gonna mix your vinegar in with water or milk. If you had like soy milk, if you're a vegan, that'll make it creamier, or coconut milk, or almond or cashew, any kind of milk. I would mix your milk and your oil and then throw your vinegar in at the end. Sometimes it has a tendency to kind of curdle the milk, but that's going to make it kind of like buttermilk. You're going to mix that all up good, stir it around with a whisk or your fork until it's all nice in suspension, and then dump that in and mix your drop biscuits around just until you see all of the dry ingredients get wet. You're going to want it like almost like a thick pancake recipe or something. You want to mix it around and make sure that all your wet liquids get dry and all your dry get wet until it's, it seems like it's good and in suspension and well mixed. And then with the drop biscuits, you're going to take and just plop them out on the tray. And so it's easier. And I would do maybe a quarter to a third of a cup. Yeah, maybe a third of a cup would be a good size per biscuit. Slot it down on the tray, give each one a little bit of room. And I usually would flatten it down to maybe 3/4 of an inch or so, somewhere between a half an inch and an inch, and kind of spread it out. So it's looks like maybe a cookie. If you were going to bake a cookie, it's about that size and about that thickness, because it's going to rise a little, it'll expand a little bit. And so if you want, you can kind of nestle them next to each other so that as they go, they'll hit each other and kind of rise up. Or you can space them just, an inch and a half apart from everybody so that they don't touch at all. And then they go out and get a little crispier around the edges and each have kind of their own space. That's up to you. But with the buttery biscuits, what I'll do, let me switch. I'll take my butter out of the fridge and I like to cut it. Where's the butter? There it is. I'll take my butter and cut it sideways one way and then stack it on itself, flip it up on its side, cut it 2 more ways, almost like you're cutting up a block of tofu or a bunch of cheese, whatever it is. So this kind of pre-cuts the butter in your biscuits so that it's kind of less fork work in the end. So cut it, kind of grit it up.
And that butter's still cold, right? Just out of the fridge.
Yeah, this butter is still cold. It can be lukewarm, but you wouldn't want it, really warm, or it's just going to kind of mush up. Now I took mine out a little early, so it's getting nice and soft, but it's still cut nicely. So then you end up with all these little cubes that when you toss into your dry mix, they're all ready to adhere to some of this floury goodness.
How much
Now-
butter are we using?
We are using 1/3 of a cup of butter.
Thank you.
And you can also, if you're a vegan, you could use like Earth Balance. You could use, any other of the the butter alternatives, even margarine if you wanted to. And then once you've got that in,
A
You're
quick
going
question about the quantity. I'm sorry to interrupt.
no problem.
approximately how much in tablespoons? Because that's how I cut my butter off
Oh,
my.
yeah, that would be five,
5 1/3.
5 1/3.
Yeah.
You could just do 5 tablespoons or 5 1/2.
If you have a stick of butter, it says it on the side, 1/3 of a cup.
My stick of butter is 2 sticks in one, so it's
Oh, okay.
the
Mine too.
tablespoon is
Then
well,
it's 1/3 of that whole block. If you get the like Kerrygold from Costco, and it's a cup, then yeah, you're just 5 1/3 is technically what,
okay, got it.
because there's 16 tablespoons in your cup. Now, once you get it in there, you're just going to mash down, or you could cut with knives or a pastry cutter, but you're going to mash the flour into the butter until all the butter is kind of in suspension on tiny little clumps. You'll notice as you keep going, the flour is getting thicker.
This is very similar to a pie crust recipe. You get that really flaky pie crust recipe.
Yeah, right now it's kind of exactly the same. And you're right, this is almost exactly the same as a pie crust recipe. Only difference would be your baking powder and baking soda, which is going to make the whole thing fluff up when you bake it. Now, there are some fun twists that you can do at this point that I've loved doing in the past. A couple ingredients you can add to your biscuits that make them even yummier. Sesame seeds, white or black sesame seeds. I would throw maybe a tablespoon of sesame seeds. And then my favorite seasoning to go in the biscuits would be rosemary. I like to put somewhere between half a teaspoon and a teaspoon of rosemary, or a good sprig or two. Chop it all up finely.
Oh, the rosemary would be fresh in your.
I usually fresh, but dried would work just as well, because when you bake it, it's gonna spread its flavor throughout the biscuit. Now, an alternative that I've been playing with lately with like pie crust and maybe even biscuits is, rather than cutting with your fork, you can just reach your hands right in the bowl and just squeeze. You grab a handful and kind of squeeze and mush, and all the little clumps of butter will kind of spread out and squish the yeast, squish the flour in.
I find out my hands are too hot to do that for pie crust. Like, I would do that and it would like make the butter like no longer be clumpy.
Melt the butter into oil, make it not clumpy.
Yeah. So,
Okay, that makes sense.
but that's, or I just have too big of mitts. I get too into it. So let's see.
All right.
You said sesame seeds. All right, let me add
Yeah,
that.
sesame seeds are delicious, especially, when you bake sesame seeds, they get this flavor that's just unreal.
Well,
another-
I have ones that are already toasted.
Oh yeah, that'll work. Another thing you could do is maybe cut up some sunflower seeds. I think some sunflower seeds could be really yummy if you were just trying to make biscuits just to munch on. Or an alternative, if you want leftovers and you want them to be yummy, you could just shred some cheese, some cheddar, or any type of your favorite cheese, and mix that in.
What do you mean leftovers? If you did that, I don't think there'd be any leftovers.
They probably won't, depending on your audience. But
I mean, I think just adding the rosemary to it makes it so there'll be no leftover biscuits.
yeah, the rosemary and sesame seeds can be really yummy. But if you want to be able to eat them later with, say, jelly and butter, you could not do the rosemary. Or if you want to eat them just as a yummy treat, you could shred up some cheese and maybe even throw in a little bit of chili powder or cumin, give it a little yummy flavor. All right, has everybody got their butter mixed into their flour? Ready to move on to the next step?
Yep.
All right, so now we're gonna measure out milk or water. You want 3/4 of a cup of that.
And I think it sounds like you want to be pretty precise with that, because if it's too wet,
Yeah, you want to be pretty precise with that.
so do you think with the biscuits, you want to be pretty precise, but the gravy, you can kind of,
Yeah, biscuits, you want to be precise because you're baking them and you want them to rise and be fluffy and yummy. The gravy, you can keep tweaking until it's just right.
excited.
All right. so-
This will bring back memories of dancing all night and having some biscuits and gravy at sunrise.
Now you want to mix your liquids in and stir them around, mix them around till it all gets soaked up.
Did you say this was your first time doing spelt?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's gonna be my first time on the gravy for doing a cassava and
Oh,
tapioca.
cassava, yeah.
Yeah, I love spelt for a while.
We could probably give you some pointers, because we've had some people from Brazil teach us how to, like, what do you call it? If you look back to our thing, we made pão de queso. So you can make like biscuits. There's a biscuit recipe with cassava flour.
Oh, yummy.
And yeah, I just spent a month in Brazil, and it was lovely. Like everywhere, like normally I would, normally you have sandwiches with bread. There they have sandwiches with bread from cassava flour. So I was like, oh, I can eat sandwiches again.
Nice.
Oh, this is,
Now, if it seems a little too moist, I would take a little handful of flour and throw it on. Mine was just a little bit moist. And then you're gonna pull it out and you want it, like a nice little blob of dough.
yeah, mine's too moist too. I couldn't tell how, but I can see how yours comes out. Mine looks kind of sticky.
Okay, then grab more flour. Throw a little bit
So
of flour on there.
I'm a little bit behind because I swore I had sesame seeds. I just threw in a teaspoon of this thing called everything bagel spice, which has all
Ooh,
sorts of
yummy.
good stuff.
Ooh,
That sounds awesome.
yeah.
But
I love-
since you guys said that yours is too wet, should I not add, instead of having to reverse and add more flour, should I maybe just add the milk in, like not dump the whole thing in?
So yeah, add most of it and then mix it around and see. And
Okay.
Mine literally was, I added 2 tablespoons of flour back into it. Now it's good.
Yeah, mine too.
So it's like just slightly different.
And then, like I said earlier, rather than rolling it out with like a rolling pin, if you'll just press it out, kind of start in the middle and squish outwards, squish it down and out, and do that on a floured surface so that they'll come up easy. And now,
And like making pizza dough.
yeah, exactly. And now if you grab a baking sheet and
Make sure you flour the surface. I almost forgot here.
yeah, flour your surface so it doesn't stick because you're gonna pull each of those up.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah.
I gotta show you mine so you can see it. It's looking almost too dry. I added the 3/4 cup of milk. Should I just try to mold it
Yeah,
together?
see if you can kind of knead it all together like a loaf of bread. And if it still seems too dry, add another sprinkle a tablespoon of water around or milk. But mine often starts looking like that and then I kind of hold it and mash it together. knead it just a little bit and it firms up into a blob. You want it similar to a, there's an open barbecue up there on the next shelf. You want it similar to a pie crust in that it got just enough moisture to hold together.
I missed the pie crust class, so this is new territory for me.
Okay.
I took the pie crust class and I still I'm not very good at making it.
I think that takes practice. I think that's the more you do it, the more you get it.
I tend to just do upside down cakes. It's less work. Just-
Like the pineapple. What was the name?
for what? Like, well, you
was
can
a
do any
cake.
kind of fruit.
No, there is a cake that you do it and then you have to.
Pineapple upside down cake, but you can do apples or peach or. But yeah, pineapple's probably the most famous. All right, I got mine all laid out.
Okay, now what I've done through the years is use either a 1-quart lid, which makes a smaller biscuit, or, I mean, a narrow mouth canning jar lid, or a wide mouth, just the ring of it. And if you want to get fancy, you can put a little oil or butter on the inside. But I just recently stepped up my cooking game and bought a biscuit cutter.
Oh, I like it.
It's got a little handle and you just snip, snip, snip. And so oil your baking sheet. If you're doing the buttery biscuits, we're gonna start placing on the baking sheet. I usually find that if you take one row, I'll go across, and if you take one row and stick it right on the edge on one side. And
Now
do
you don't, did you oil or flour the baking sheet at all?
I just oiled it, I buttered it, I took a stick of butter and rubbed it across. You can take your butter wrapper and use that.
What about parchment paper?
Yeah, you can do parchment paper if you don't want to have butter or any oil underneath it. Parchment works great.
I think I need a bigger cutting board.
How thick do you make it when you're pushing it out? On the
It looks
surface?
like about a 1/2 inch,
Half an inch, okay.
somewhere around a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch.
And then how far do you have the biscuits on the tray separated?
And then I cut them all. I cut the whole thing up. Where is it? Okay, as well as I can, get as many circles as I can out. And then start stacking them into the baking sheet. And I like to put the buttery ones fairly close together so that they hit each other and rise or forced to rise as they expand rather than keep fluffing out. So
You
I do
want them
mine
actually touching each other.
almost touching each other, not quite. So I do mine with a row of 3 tight to one side, and then the next row goes and kind of touches the other edge. And it goes back and forth and get them pretty close together, maybe 1/2 inch apart. And that way they'll all kind of hold each other in place. Meanwhile, your oven has been heating up nicely and is just about at 10.
Are you gonna rework the scraps to make more biscuit?
I certainly am.
Okay.
Yeah, I just take everything that's left and blob it together, roll it out. If you have any that are kind of about biscuit shape but oblong, you can kind of pat them into a biscuity shape.
My poor computer always gets so dirty during these cooking shows.
Yeah, I was just picking up my tablet going, whoops, I got flour all over this thing.
Me too.
Hey,
Sometimes
I'm your mute. Oh, sorry.
I'm always picking onion out of my computer or
Right.
Yeah, and in the end, I'll just take all the scraps, mush them all into a ball, and then, just pat it out into a little biscuit-like blob.
I love I never thought of using the top of a jar like that.
Yeah, that makes a fantastic biscuit cutter. Especially if you think and put a little oil on the inside of the rim, then the biscuits slide out easily without kind of catching.
Okay, so I'm so excited. I have an antique biscuit cutter
All
that
right.
I got from my mother-in-law because she wasn't cooking anymore.
So cool.
Yeah, except it has screws right down on the inside, which is a little bizarre. I'm a cleaner at heart, so I'm thinking, oh, this is gonna be a lot of fun to clean.
It was probably designed by a man who didn't think about it.
I know, screws on your utensils is kind of funny.
Yeah, mine's like welded together, looks like,
That makes sense.
or maybe just even glued. I don't know.
This is fun.
It's like, oh, we started getting spoiled. You can just buy the package of biscuits, but it's like they cost a lot of money.
They do.
And this is so simple.
Yeah, and I just ended up with 17 biscuits that once they come out are gonna be fluffy and buttery, just like they came out of a can.
But they also mine have rosemary and sesames. You don't get that with the ones you buy.
Yeah,
from the store.
you don't.
No, you don't.
I'm excited about the rosemary and sesames. All right. I think let's see how many I did. I end up
I
4,
think I
8,
made mine
12.
too thick.
I got 17 biscuits.
Nice. That's what I got.
I did something right.
I had like 7. I don't think I made them thick enough.
When I do,
I made them too thick.
when I do the wide mouth canning jar lids, I get about 10. This biscuit cutter is more like the regular narrow mouth.
All right, so putting them in the oven for,
Give us a minute.
okay,
Yeah, whenever you do throw them in your oven, I'd set your first timer for about 6 minutes.
oh wow, that quick, huh?
Yeah, depending on which rack you're cooking on, and how well your oven heats. After about 6 minutes, I like to pull them out and take a spatula and lift one up or flip it and look at how the color is on the bottom, because it'll be perfect when they're just slightly golden. When you see a bit of color, it starts turning color. You want to get them before they're brown or blackened. Just some nice golden deliciousness. And then once everybody's got their biscuits in, let me know and we'll move on to gravy. But there's no hurry. But just remember, set your timer, whether it's in your head or on your stove or a little windy cock or your cell phone, just set a timer to not forget.
So my last one, I just decided not to cut. I just made it a little cookie. So I officially got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 11.
Perfect. Yeah,
That's good.
between 10 and 17, you're good to go.
Suzanne, what did you get?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5.
There you go.
I think I made them very thick. I might have made them too thick.
What I would do is, rather than redoing the whole thing, just push them down and spread them out a little bit so that they're wider.
Okay.
Did you use a wide mouth canning jar lid or?
I used a regular one, but I think I was too thick to begin with.
Oh yeah, if that was a regular mouth jar lid, then it's way too thick. If that was wide mouth, then it's
And it-
maybe a little too
Yeah.
thick.
So, yeah, I made it very thick. Whoopsies.
What'll happen if you make them too thick is the
It won't
bottom
cook
will
in
be all toasted and the sides will be cooked, but it'll still be jelly in the middle, which I've had happen. And, you know, there's kind of two solutions you can do for that. Is one is just flip it on its head, you know, and let the top side cook and the middle cook. The other option would be, you know, if you're done and you eat them and you're like, oh, they seem to undercooked. Next time you go to eat them, you could slice them down the middle with the bread knife, open them up and throw them in like a toaster oven or a toaster and you know, cook the insides a little more. But if you get it out nice and thin, then you should be good to go. Did anybody do the drop biscuits?
No.
No.
So
I
is
will-
there anything
I
with
will
the-
next time because they just seem like less mixing. Less,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nothing goes on the top of these before we put them in the oven?
What's that?
Nothing goes on the top of these?
Nope, just throw them on in the oven.
All right, here it goes. And you say set the timer for 6 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
all right. Let's start making gravy.
All right. So I'm gonna do kind of two separate pans, one with the gravy and one with the veggies to toss into the gravy. You may not want the veggies, you may want extra veggies. There's, you know, the sky's the limit, the imagination's the limit on your veggies. But the first thing we're going to start with is our flour and nutritional yeast. Now, for your benefit, I am going to measure out the quantity and see how it feels.
Okay, so I have a quick question. How large of a pan are you using for the gravy? Like how much gravy are we, it will,
I am using the dinner plate size cast iron.
The 10-inch, yeah.
Yeah, the 10-inch. You could use probably the 8-inch, the 10 or the 12. We're not going to fill the whole thing.
Hubbs, your flour is in the way, so we can't see.
Sorry.
so what are you measuring now? And
I'm going to start and look at. Yeah, that looks good. Let's go with a third, more or less a third of a cup of nutritional yeast.
you're starting out with a cold cast iron skillet?
Yep. It can be warm, but you just have to be ready to stir it. Because once you start it toasting, you're gonna have to kind of stay on top of it. And so the key here is just matching the amount of flour and the amount of yeast. So this is where you can scale the recipe up or down. If you want to make a big batch for a lot of friends and family, you could start with a cup of yeast and a cup of flour. We're starting just for simplicity's sake. I measured out a third of a cup. You could do a half a cup, might be a more appropriate amount for the amount of biscuits.
Measure.
And what is your heat set on?
I'm gonna set it on kind of, I have an induction range top I'm cooking it on today, and I usually set it on maybe a 4, but if you were doing a flame, it's gonna be kind of a low side of medium.
I have an induction burner and boy, I really like it.
Yeah. Now my timer just went off. I looked at my biscuits at 6 minutes. They're starting to smell yummy, but they're not ready. So I set it for 2 more minutes. If you haven't looked at yours yet, you could probably just add 2 minutes to the timer. Whoa. Let's see.
All right, get my beater. So I'm trying because I'm gluten sensitive, I'm gonna do cassava and tapioca. So I put
Nice.
a third a cup of cassava and then just like a tablespoon of tapioca for thickener. You could probably do just cassava.
Yeah, you probably could just use straight cassava.
So let's see.
What liquid are we putting in?
We're not putting in any liquids yet. The next step
Oh.
is gonna be oil. But
Trying to toast the flour. You're trying to get it a little brown.
yes, the key to a tasty gravy is toasting your flour a little bit.
Yeah, it's basically a roux.
Right.
I could switch my. I'm allergic to flour. No,
Recipes.
that was a good sneeze. I didn't sneeze in my food, but. Oh, yeah. I've got,
So now what we're doing is you want to make sure you're keeping the mixture moving around. You don't want it sitting on any one place of the pan for too long. You can leave it for 5 or 10 seconds, and then you want to give it another stir. The goal here is to toast your flour, but not to burn it.
oh,
Many,
I don't think I can mix flour and look at my biscuits at the same time. Let's see here. But they're looking good.
Yeah, my biscuits are starting to look a little golden, starting to get some
I
color.
definitely need to give them like 2 more minutes, 3 more minutes. They've risen, but there's no golden on the bottom.
Okay, then back to stirring.
Yeah, get rid of all the clumps.
Yeah, you want to get rid of all the clumps. You want to get it out nice and level. And so there's coverage on the whole pan, and then let it toast for a little bit.
But you didn't add oil to it yet, right?
No, not yet.
Okay, just the dry.
Yep. Now I called for olive oil in the recipe. That's what I've always kind of traditionally used. And that's what gives it my favorite flavor, but currently I'm not allowed to cook with olive oil. The Reverend Mike Oxnall.
Why am I squeezing so much?
Hi, Gurmy.
All right.
Yeah, when I looked at my biscuits at 8 minutes, they were starting to get some color, but not really golden yet. So, I don't know how evenly everyone's oven cooks, but you can take your biscuits out and spin them 180 and put them back in, and that'll make sure it kind of cooks more evenly.
So let's see. I guess I guess I can't stir and chop stuff up.
No, soon we're gonna throw in the oil and then some water or milk or broth, and then we'll be ready to get the veggies going on the side.
Now, is there any veggie that you don't recommend to put in?
That's a good question. I haven't experimented honestly with a ton. I've just thought about, the basics of what's going to taste really good. I like peppers, mildly spicy or mild. I'll do like banana peppers or bell peppers. You could do like a poblano, probably give it a little fire.
That's a good idea. I got a bunch of jalapenos.
I don't know about jalapenos, or if you were gonna do a jalapeno, I wouldn't do a bunch.
No, yeah.
All right. So now my biscuits at about 11 minutes have a nice golden color. You
Nice.
guys see that? How it's white on the top, a little bit of gold there on the bottom. That's prime. So I'm going to turn my oven off and come back to the gravy. Now, are people starting to smell the flavor of the nutritional yeast toasting?
I think that's why I was sneezing at the beginning. No, just kidding. But I mean, cassava flour I'm using is very fine. So I think I was stirring too vigorously.
I think I'm literally about 3 minutes behind you.
Okay.
So yeah, it's starting to have this really, I don't know, toasted nutty flavor.
When you reach that point, when it's starting
Oh,
to
the smoke alarm went off.
Biscuits are ready. So this is where it's a bit of a judgment call. You're waiting until you smell not just the nutritional yeast itself when you poured it out, but you start to smell a kind of a toasted aroma coming up off the pan. And once you reach that point, you want to go to your next step, which is adding some oil. Now, like I said earlier, usually I would do olive oil. Today, I'm going to try coconut oil and maybe even throw in a little bit of avocado. Those are the two I'm allowed to cook with currently. I love avocado oil. I make a mayonnaise weekly with raw eggs and avocado. That's delish.
Next cooking show.
So the oil, what you want to do is, like, who was that earlier? There's somebody talking about a roux. So what we want to do now is get enough oil in the pan so that all the liquid, all the powder becomes like a roux. It becomes moist. All the dry powder gets moistened by oil. If you get a little too much, it's not a problem. And if you don't have enough, just throw a little more in. But at the end of this process, you want all of your powder oily. You don't want to be looking at any flour or yeast that's not swimming in oil.
Well, it's not an issue if you put too much oil.
No, it's not.
Well, I was pouring it in really slowly. I could have just dumped it.
Yeah, you know, you don't want too much, but it's okay if you've got a good bit. Now, you know, part of doing the veggies separately is if you have children that don't like veggies or certain veggies, like I do. My kids, one of them really doesn't like mushrooms. So you can see here, we've got a consistency where you've got everything is soaked up and covered in delicious oil.
Well, I don't like bell peppers, so I understand.
Right. Yeah, some people like pepper. You know, you can cater this to however you like. I would definitely recommend at the basic level, some onions, some garlic, and black pepper. That's kind of the minimum flavor profile I'd recommend. And now, once again, we're letting this mixture toast for just a little bit longer to really bring out that toasted flavor. And you can put it down real low now, and we can start in on our veggies. Put it on maybe the lowest flame you can go, or if you're using a induction or electric, you know, put it down to 2 or 3.
Now you said you had a solar system, so you're actually cooking on solar.
Yes, more or less. But
Because you said you had induction cooking.
Yeah, I do have an induction. I don't, when we're cooking just on the solar, if we're on battery, we don't use the induction. We'll just use a gas. We've got wood stove, gas stove, or induction.
So that's
I
if you're
love-
completely off grid, so you're not now.
No, I'm not off grid.
No, but I
I'm-
mean, if you're running off your batteries in like an off grid backup power mode.
Yeah, then you probably wouldn't have an induction stove.
Yeah.
All right, so now on to the veggies. We're gonna also, while we're working on the veggies, you gotta kind of keep an eye on your gravy, giving it a stir every once in a while. Let's see if I can set this up. All right, there we go. So now I'm gonna cut about half of a big, nice size onion. If you had a small onion, you could do a whole one. Or if you had a huge onion, you could do a third. It looks like it's probably gonna be, I can measure it when I'm done, probably somewhere
Biscuits are
around.
interesting. The one that were on the bottom shelf cooked really good, and the one on the top shelf still needs a couple more minutes. It's like.
Oh, yeah, right. Most ovens cook at different speeds on the top and the bottom. So if you got them on two different levels, definitely keep an eye on each one.
I like how ours ones look.
All right, now you're gonna want a little bit of oil for your veggies. Or conversely, you could throw some ghee or some butter in.
Now, are you cutting that?
I'm putting the veggies in a separate pan.
But do you cut them like very small, or do you?
Good. I cut them kind of medium, but you could cut them very small if you want the flavor. If you want to mix the flavors really well throughout the recipe and don't want bites to like chew on, you could mix it. I mean, cut it really small. If you like having, onions or peppers or garlic, mushrooms to chew on, you cut them chunkier.
I guess if you cut it smaller, it hides it from the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, or if you have kids that don't love onions, but they will tolerate them if they can't tell they're there, then you mince them up real small. We've got one adventurous son in the eating world and one that's getting pickier and pickier by the day. He still loves this recipe if I make it without veggies. So that's part of
Tell
it.
him if he wants something different, cook it.
We do.
I mean, that's mom. I thank mom regularly for being a horrible cook because it made it so I learned to cook.
I don't think that's true. I think you have
My mom
problem
can
eating
cook well now. but
everything.
As a kid, she'll be the first to admit that
That
she.
was John's cooking.
I think we should have to ask that to your brother or to your mother. She will not
Yeah.
think the same.
All right, so my biscuits are starting to brown on the bottom, but not on the top. Is that okay?
No, if they're golden or starting to burn on the bottom, take them out.
They're not burning, but they're golden.
You just
Oh,
want
perfect.
just the bottom cooked,
Take
right?
them out. They'll often feel doughy up top, but as they cool down, they set a bit.
They look,
Now I like a lot of garlic in mine. So I've got 6 cloves cut up, or 6 cloves that I've peeled and smashed. And I'm gonna cut these up and throw them in with our veggies.
so you
Now
started
say-
the onions first?
Yeah, I do always start onions first. But thanks for pointing out the order. So, I would start with my onions first, and then if you're gonna throw in mushrooms, mini mushrooms need to cook for a while. And garlic, I like to let kind of throw in at the end, so it's still got some yummy, powerful flavor. So
Plus, you don't want to burn that garlic.
No, you don't. So I would go with my onions and then my mushrooms. and then my peppers, and then garlic. Now, if you cut it up smaller, obviously it's gonna cook quicker. And now, if you haven't in a little while, give your yeast and flour mixture another stir. Just make sure you're not roasting it too much in any one spot.
Now, the difference in texture between these two biscuit recipes is the drop biscuit end up being like a taller biscuit, or?
Yeah, it's gonna be a little taller, but it's gonna end up fluffy because of the baking soda and vinegar kind of chemistry. You know how they react in the classic volcano experiment. They work very similar in this biscuit recipe. The key is to kind of mix all your dries well, mix your wets well, toss it in and stir it up just as much as it needs to be to have the dry all absorb some liquid and have all the liquid gone, but not too much. And then they'll still be fluffy. Rather than kneading them or squishing them out or rolling them out, you just plop them on to your baking sheet, and that makes it so that they're still activating that mixture of baking soda and vinegar.
I like how Lulu's one is looking.
Oh, this is just my mushrooms. I'm trying to make it so a person who doesn't like mushrooms won't recognize them.
So they're poisonous mushrooms?
They don't like them. They got a mental problem with them.
Is that your children?
No, it's
Do-
my
do
son, my son-in-law.
Son-in-law.
Do they have poison in them?
You know,
Not
you
a
could-
Gargus.
if you throw them in a food processor, or you can conversely, you could throw them in your gravy and then use an inversion blender and chop it up real small.
So
Well, I'm trying to
are
get
your
him
standard
accustomed.
go-to veggies for your gravy?
My standard are mushroom, pepper, onion, and garlic.
Okay.
Pepper. Shoot.
Gee, guys, can we not like mushrooms?
Yeah, you don't have to do mushrooms at all.
Oh, it's such a wonderful flavor. Once people learn to like it, which I
You
think,
gotta learn to like it. If you have to learn to like it, it's not that serious.
no,
It's
but
not
they're-
really, I don't
they're-
think it's, for most people, mushrooms is a texture thing. I think not a taste
I like
thing.
mushrooms.
It's
Oh, it's a
very much a texture thing.
it's
But-
they're so rich in
Remember-
Because a
flavor.
lot of
Mushroom-
people love mushroom soup, and that tends to have like no mushroom texture.
Right, it's blended in. You know, another twist you could do that's like a classic Southern twist, instead of mushrooms, you could throw sausage. You could take sausages and either cut them up small, or if you have ground sausage, just
Exactly.
squish it
Oh.
out.
Or sausage, man. That stuff is weird, but I miss that.
You know, there's my favorite fake meat product. It's Field Roast is the company, and they make or maybe it's the Grain Meat Company. They make this apple sage sausage that's the yummiest gluten or meat alternative I've ever tried. They have an Italian, a chorizo, and a apple sage, and the apple sage is really yummy.
Yeah, the sausage we used to have growing up, you'd make like the tofu, and then it was like the ground soybean left over from making soy milk.
Right.
You'd get that and then mix it with fresh, spices, thyme and oregano, and trying to think what else. But
Rosemary, black pepper. Yeah,
what's the song? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Just like, so on Thanksgiving, we made a ton of stuffing, and that's the spices we put in it.
Yummy.
parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
And when I hear that song, that's kind of getting close to a typical, I would call a poultry seasoning mix.
Yep.
Not so heavy on the rosemary.
How well do you fry up the vegetables? I guess it's depending on your preference, right?
Yeah, depending on your preference. I like them to get, soft, and like my onions to turn kind of translucent. My garlic to toast in there a little bit, to where it's imparting its flavor, but it's not getting too roasted, browned, or.
Yeah, I absolutely love this little saute pan. It does everything so quickly, and then because it's got the rounded edges, I can literally flip things like that. But it doesn't do good on things that you want to cook slowly. It's a really thin, but all right. I keep almost forgetting to mix the oil flour mix.
Yeah, don't neglect that. I think we're actually at the stage where we could add some liquids to those. They've been going long enough.
All right.
Should have a nice, yummy flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead
How
and
much liquid?
throw a good bit of milk in mine.
I still have like a half a can of the coconut milk, so I can.
Nice. Let me see. I'll measure it out.
That's like perfect. I can put a half a can of coconut milk in the biscuits and a half in the. No, I guess it was 3/4 in the biscuits and about a quarter. Oh, there you go. It started simmering instantly.
Yeah,
The biscuits are yummy.
when you add in the liquid, you want to immediately start whisking it and mixing it.
Oh,
Otherwise,
it's thickening really quick.
yeah, otherwise it can get clumpy. So I started with about 2 cups. It looks like
I need more water than that. Yeah.
somewhere between 2 and 3 cups of water or milk or broth. And you want it to, it's going to start off being really watery. And then as the flour starts cooking, it's going to thicken.
Oh, this is so nice and brown.
Nice.
Yeah, they're never gonna see the mushrooms coming.
And I
Perfect.
haven't even added the soy sauce. It's so brown. Like I always assumed it came out so brown because you add soy sauce to it.
Right. Well, soy sauce it definitely lends it some flavor and color.
But
Is it the umami?
I use tamari, I believe.
you also get a lot of umami from the nutritional yeast. And then of
Yeah.
course you get umami from toasting the flour too. So
Right. I thought you were asking about shoyu or tamari. You can use shoyu, tamari, just good old fashioned soy sauce. You can also
really the
use-
only difference it seems like is how much salt is in the different ones.
well, one of them actually has wheat and one does not.
Okay.
I believe the tamari is just soy, and the shoyu has soy and wheat, but I'm not absolute.
And then
I have a question. Why are you using the soy? Just for the color?
No, it's got a really yummy flavor. It provides your salt, and it also provides the yummy flavor.
Okay, thank you.
So I would maybe start with about a tablespoon of soy sauce, and then, taste it. See if, was that salty enough? If not, maybe I should throw a little more.
And you're correct about the tamari versus soy sauce. Tamari does not have wheat. I have both, and so I read the ingredients.
yeah. And I think the best one the one I really like is the Bragg's brand because it's like very low in salt, because I grew up without really using much salt, so most of them are too salty for me.
To me, Bragg's has always kind of seemed like watered down soy sauce.
Yeah.
So
Which
quick
is-
question. You said you added 2 to 3 cups of either water or milk?
Yeah,
My pan might be a little small. I'd have the 8-inch. Well, I'll give it a try. We'll see.
your can, like a coconut milk can.
Oh, your pan.
My pan,
Oh, your
So
pan.
I put a can and a half, or a can, no, let's see. A can and a half of water and then a third a can of the coconut milk.
If you did
Just
1/3
under
cup
two-
of
two
flour,
cans.
1/3 cup of yeast, why don't you just start with 2 cups
All right.
of milk or water, and also have some on reserve, because once it starts to thicken, it can get really thick and you may need to add more. Like mine is starting to thicken. And so then you want to just kind of watch it, and sometimes it'll get really thick and you need to throw a bit more in.
So I have my temperature on the pan low. I'm getting ready to add the liquid. Should I raise it some?
That's right. Turn it back up to a medium when you start adding your liquids. It was on really low to toast, but yeah, now turn it back up to a medium.
You
That'll
just
help.
want a low simmer, right?
Yeah, low simmer. You want it, you know.
Yours is
I
not
mean,
as brown as mine. Mine turned out really brown. What kind of flour is that one?
My flour?
Yeah.
Oh, I did mostly cassava with a little tapioca like you did.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know if you can, let me hold it up to the camera. I don't know if you can see, but look how brown that is.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yummy. Maybe you had, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you got a good seasoning on your pan.
I definitely really toasted the flour, so.
Nice. Yeah, that's,
Originally, I had it at a little too high of a temperature and it was browning too quickly, so.
I've definitely done that before. I've burned it. Now, if you do end up burning it on the bottom, you can rescue it. What I would do if you burn it before you add your oil would be to just dump all the powdery stuff off the top, you know, and kind of gently kind of scoop off what's on top, and then go over your, you know, sink and scrape off all the fried part, throw it back in and just go for your oil. All right, now mine is thickened up quite nicely. Now I've thrown in my soy sauce, although today I'm using some coconut aminos instead of soy sauce. And I'm gonna give it a good ample dose of black pepper, one of my favorite seasonings. I've just
Wow.
recently started putting a little bit of cumin in it for a yummy flavor. Or if you didn't put any rosemary in your biscuits, you could throw a little bit in your gravy. If you do it that way, then your biscuits can remain kind of plain, and you know, a partner, kids, or you tomorrow can throw a little cheese in it, or sausage, or jelly, or however like, dip it in a soup.
How tasty is it, you know, if it's rosemary biscuits and then you put sweet stuff on it, jam and stuff? Is it still?
You know, I'm sure it'd be yummy, but it might also be a little, I don't know, strange. Maybe rosemary is gonna be good.
I've had a rosemary lavender sweet biscuit before.
Oh, yummy. That sounds good.
Rosemary and honey taste great together.
So,
Rosemary and honey go great together?
Yep, I just tried it, that's why.
oh, okay. You just put some
Yeah.
honey on your biscuit and it was fine.
I
Oh,
did,
yeah.
yep.
Some butter and honey. All right, now that my gravy has thickened up and gotten to the kind of the consistency I want, now I'm gonna take and throw in all my veggies. Now, if you were going to make some for a kid that didn't want it, now you could pull out a bowl full of the gravy without veggies and mix your veggies in, or you could just keep your veggies to the side and let people put a scoop of the veggies on and then put a scoop of the gravy on.
I have a question. Why, I mean, I don't know what it is, but your gravy is really, really white and your gravy is really, really brown.
Yep.
Is that because of the soy sauce?
Well, I'm throwing raw cow milk in mine.
I think I toasted mine a lot more than he
Oh.
did.
Dang it. Dang it, I meant to throw bone broth in instead of the cow milk so that I could eat it, which is hilarious because I got caught up in the moment and threw milk in instead.
And I did add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce to mine.
Nice.
But
So
yeah,
yours
mine
is so
mine has a really like,
good flavor. good
well, no, mine is almost burnt flavor. So I added a little more soy sauce. It's definitely toasted it, I think, too much.
Is it thick?
Oh, it tastes good. Like now that I added, I only put 1 tablespoon of soy sauce originally, and it
Mhm.
tasted a little too burnt.
And then you added another or something?
So I added another tablespoon of soy sauce. And now that I've added all the vegetables and all that in there, it definitely has a good.
Okay, note to self.
So is it
8-inch
thick?
No,
Is it a thick kind of gravy or?
Oh yeah,
Mine is thick, but if it seems too thick, you can just throw in some more water or milk or broth or whatever it is.
and I guess if it's too thin, you can add a little more cornstarch or tapioca flour.
I would probably just let it keep cooking and it'll cook off some of the water.
Oh, okay.
Or if it was way too thin, you know, it starts off thin, but then once it gets up to temperature, the whatever your thickener is will do its thing.
Hey, come say hi. It's the cooking
All right.
time.
Does
Hello, how are you?
anybody have any questions?
Hi,
to wrap up? It's like,
Hi.
Hello.
It's Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Oh, hi, Maria.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You
we're
look
wrapping up.
tasty, doing something tasty and good.
Oh yeah.
So I do have a question. One of our cooking shows, we bought specifically coconut liquid aminos, and I've not used it since. In tasting it, it tastes a little bit on the sweeter side. Is that a good addition or just a different addition?
I mean, it would be a different addition if you weren't doing soy sauce. I think it'd be a good addition if you put, you know, just a little bit, maybe a teaspoon and taste it and see.
So
How you
maybe
like it?
do a combination so I could start using up my coconut amino.
Yeah, do a combination, or, you know, take a spoonful of it and put a drop of the liquid aminos on it and try it together and see if you like it.
Okay, so how much of the soy sauce did you add? You said a tablespoon?
Yeah, 1 to 2 tablespoons.
Okay.
I originally put 1 and then you needed the second one.
My son Jaden has just done a creepy apple sculpture from
Looks like the Grinch.
modeling clay he wanted to share with you all.
Oh, I like it. How does it taste?
Like clay.
A green apple.
That'd be
No,
great.
All right, Hubbs, do you have any final?
I love green apples.
Wait a minute, we gotta dish it up. You always want to end the show.
Yeah,
before we have-
wait, Lulu. You have to wait, Lulu and Susan. They haven't finished.
That's okay.
I'm done because I have not
No, but
tried to
our
cook.
chef hasn't plated it and did his presentation, and I think that's important.
I'm eating it already, see?
Yeah, but that's different. It seems that you're eating all day long.
That's true. I eat all the time.
I know how you do it. I wish I could like to eat more.
All right.
All right. With biscuits, it depends whether you want to cut it when you're going to eat or whether you just like little bite-sized chunks. I like bite-sized chunks, so I just break my biscuit up into bite-sized chunks. And then smother them in gravy.
Mhm.
All right, I tasted it with just the gravy without the vegetables yet. And it was a tablespoon of soy sauce and a teaspoon of the coconut amino acid. It is so good. I mean, I did a lot
Oh
of
my God, I'm so jealous.
red pepper. There's plenty. Come on, Laura, you could come here.
Oh yeah,
You're only a plane ride away.
Yep.
I think I can go walking there. How many kilometers or miles it will be?
From Chile to St. Louis?
Yeah,
A couple miles, you know, short,
A
short walk.
couple.
oh, yeah.
Here's mine.
I think I can do it. No, I don't think I will.
Get in different sunlight.
I mean, I can do it. I think it will take like 2 years or more.
So everybody, don't forget, take a picture and post it.
I'm gonna eat it first.
All right.
I didn't see the plate. I'm sorry. Where's your plate, chef?
Oh, you're talking about Hubs. My plate is empty.
Oh my God,
Nice.
I'm serving a plate to my son, Jaden. Here he is,
David.
tucking in.
Is it yummy?
Well, you find out
Oh,
if people are not talking, that's when it's really good.
Yeah.
no, it could be because they're just hungry like me. I'm hungry all the time because I don't like eating a lot.
So, all right. Thank you so much, Hubs, for sharing this, and especially
pleasure.
like sharing like 2 recipes all at the same time. Well, I guess it's better if I had the different cameras so you can see me. And,
Thank you. I'm looking forward.
and I really like all the different variations you say you can do, you know, but you know, at the same time making the biscuits proportions, right? So
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up, and then everybody feel free to stick around and eat together and chat, because that's
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure cooking with you all, and I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy this tasty food.